Grief is complicated and it doesn't come with a user manual, but still somehow we're expected to get through the day. We're figuring that out together. Welcome to Humans Forward, the show that makes being human feel a little less complicated. I'm your host, Gentry Lusby. Grief doesn't just show up in funerals or heartbreak playlists. It shows up in invisible places too. And most times, it doesn't bring a delicious casserole or sympathy card. Just sadness. And I get it. Grief is not a sexy topic to talk about. I mean, it's not like any of us are out here wearing "Ask Me About My Existential Dread" t-shirts. Although, I would totally wear that t-shirt. Because we need to talk about it because grief can ambush you. It's kind of like when you're reading the instructions for how to put together your IKEA Soderheim Flocken sofa, just straight up ambush you, and you're just suddenly in a mess on the floor surrounded by hex nuts and Allen wrenches. I sometimes feel like grief is throwing me a surprise party. And as soon as I walk in the room and it yells, "Surprise!" I'm suddenly in a heap on the floor, sobbing into an empty room because this particular party was just for me. Grief is personal and it's messy and it's often misunderstood, especially when it's grief over something that never came to be. And because we're human, we feel, even when it hurts, especially when it hurts. And yet somehow we keep going. Today we are joined by my incredible wife, who's going to help us figure out how to walk through grief. Roll that tape. Does anybody even say that anymore? Roll that tape? I'm going with it. Roll the tape. Welcome to Humans Forward, Gretchen.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah. So before we get into talking about grief and then talking about your story, we're going to have a little fun.
All right.
And maybe it'll be a little cathartic. Because as you know, people say so many insensitive things to those going through hard times, especially grief, especially people going through infertility. I don't know why. I think people just feel the need to say something, but it's awful sometimes.
Yeah.
And I was going to call this game Stupid Shit People Say, but instead
rats.
I know, right? I called it Made Up or Shut Up. So here's how it's going to work.
Okay.
I'm going to read you statements. I've scoured the internet for statements that people have actually said to those going through infertility.
All right.
Some of these are real. Some are made up. If you think it's real, you say, "Shut up."
Can I yell it as if
yes,
I'm saying it to the
I'm
person?
hoping it's like cathartic because that's what we want to say.
All right. I'm ready for this.
If you think it's made up, you say made up.
All right.
All right.
Okay.
You ready?
I'm ready.
Here we go. My cousin was infertile, and she just had her husband wear a crystal around his neck during sex, and they got pregnant.
Shut up.
It is. It's real. Someone actually said that to someone.
Yep.
I'm not sure how I feel about that because I kind of like crystals now, but you know.
I know. Well, that's why I was contemplating and like, that sounds like something
I would make
hear.
up. Yeah. All right. My acupuncturist told me it was caused by my low mother energy.
Shut up.
It is. You're very good at this.
Thank you. Well, I also went to an
real?
acupuncturist.
Did they say that to you?
Well, not in those words, but chi.
Ugh. All right. Maybe your uterus is just shy. Have you thought about manifesting a more welcoming womb energy?
I'm going to say made up, but I also truly believe that somebody has said that
probably
in the course of history.
You're right, though. That's made up.
Okay, all right.
Okay. I read that eating only foods shaped like a baby, tiny carrots, grapes, those little baby bell cheeses, can trick your body into pregnancy mode.
I'm going to need a minute. That's the best ever. I'm going to say made up.
Yeah, also made up.
Oh, wow.
Man, you are like, you're on it.
Man,
all right.
clearly, I've been through this.
Here we go.
Crying now.
Everything happens for a reason.
Shut up!
Correct. You know how sex works, right?
Shut up.
Yeah. We may have had that one said to us.
Yep.
It's Jesus's plan for you to not have kids.
Shut up.
Correct. My husband could just look at me and we'd get pregnant.
Shut up.
Just be happy you don't have kids. You'll never sleep again when they come.
Shut up.
Correct. Maybe you're being punished for past sins you've committed.
Shut up.
Mm-hmm.
I have had people say that to me, or allude to it at least.
Yeah.
It's wildly painful.
My neighbor swears by herbal chai tea. She got pregnant immediately after switching to it.
Shut up.
That's made up.
Made up?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, it's raspberry tea. That's the one I heard.
Yeah.
Raspberry leaf tea is very good for the womb. So I had many ladies tell me to drink that and that I would get pregnant.
Okay, well, I mean,
So do I get half points?
it's like a halfie.
Half points.
It's like a made up shut up.
This is a good game, Gentry.
Thank you. I like it. What else? So some of those things people said to us, maybe we'll keep that quiet. But what other things did people say to us that you remember?
Actually, as I was preparing for this podcast, I had some of those in mind because we did very much get some of those comments.
Yeah.
I think it bears repeating, but I had an older gentleman who is still in our life say to me, "Well, you know how sex works, right?" And I remember looking at him and being like, just shocked. And I don't think I said anything. I think I just like slowly walked away. And it was like, oh, I'm sorry. Is that the issue?
Oh,
we don't know how to do it properly?
Oh my God.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So there's that.
People are so helpful.
I have, very, really helpful advice from the next, the
older generation.
The older generation.
Mm-hmm.
I've had a lot of people say to me, oh, we know this couple who couldn't get pregnant and then they decided to adopt. And as soon as they decided to adopt, they got pregnant. Mm-hmm. So I just know it, Gretchen. I just know you can get pregnant. So got that.
Also painful.
Yep. Got that one a lot. And I remember being called barren once.
Oh yeah. I remember,
Do you remember that?
Talking about.
And that one really shook me. Because it feels like such an archaic term tied to like a social outcast,
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
I had never thought of myself in those terms. So to be called that, I remember it really, it put me into a spin for several days.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah. Was that the one in public?
Oh, I don't know. I don't know.
Yeah.
It's
one
all
time
in
we were
public.
outed in a group trip, by a minister, and he outed us in front of like 60 people, some of whom were our family, who didn't know that we were trying and
experiencing
infertility. So that was a fun one.
Yeah.
I think the lesson, right? It's like, think about what you say.
Yeah.
It doesn't take a lot of effort to be thoughtful and intentional with your words. And if you don't know what to say, often the best thing is to not say anything. I mean, my mom used to say that if you can't say anything nice, just don't say anything at all. And people want to be helpful, but often in grief and in infertility,
people are trying to fill the silence because they think that it's required of them.
Yeah. It's just be there for people. That's all you have to do.
I will say too that like some of the comments that have been painful were not even directed at us. It was just people sharing about their own lives. Mm-hmm. And I remember thinking, do you know who you're talking with right now? Yeah. Like, so many pregnancy announcements that were delivered unhelpfully, like running into friends and then being like, oh, I just found out I'm pregnant with our third or our fourth. It's just not good timing. It was unplanned. We can't financially handle this right now. And I just remember staring at them being like, oh,
do you know who you're talking to?
Do you know I would do anything? I have done everything. Yeah. Or, this happens often too. Like, oh, we just had a pregnancy scare. Oh my gosh, I think I'm going to make my husband get a vasectomy. Yeah. And it's like, oh, I'm sorry that you are so fertile that your husband has to undergo the knife to stop the baby making machine. Like, God forbid.
Oh, yeah, that one gets me too. I'm just like, I'm done with that. Done with that. How many apps are you juggling to keep your work on track? You've got one for notes, one for communication, one for updates, one for project management, and somehow the most important piece of information you needed still got buried in an email thread somewhere. I used to feel like this all the time until I found ClickUp. Now, I manage my entire business with it. from creating content to project management to even producing the Humans Forward show. ClickUp is how I keep everything organized and moving forward. ClickUp adapts to how you work. So whether you're working solo or you're working with a team, it helps you stay focused and organized. It's kind of like having a personalized command center for your business or your life, let's be honest, that helps you stay organized and get things done. And you can try it for free using my link, gentrylusby.com/ClickUp. It's an affiliate link. So if you sign up using the link, you help support this show. Go check out ClickUp. It's the all-in-one productivity platform to manage your work your way. Okay, let's be honest. How's your email marketing game going? I have spent more hours than I probably should admit on trying all the different email marketing platforms and dealing with clunky editors and then wondering what my open rates were. And honestly, all of that changed when I found Kit. Kit made email marketing really, really simple, especially for creators and entrepreneurs who want less hassle and more impact. You can write engaging emails really fast and simply. You can even do advanced automations or simple automations. It's all right there for you. And there's lots of data that you get access to see just how all of your emails are performing. So no fluff, no corporate nonsense, just a really powerful tool made for people like us. It's also trusted by people like James Clear and Tim Ferriss and Pat Flynn. And you can try Kit for free using my link, gentrylusby.com/kit. By using that link, you're not only upgrading your email game, you're also supporting this show because it's an affiliate link. Check out Kit, email made effortless. If you had to paint a picture of grief, what would you paint? Wait, knowing you, I brought tissues for this episode. So welcome to the studio tissue box.
The studio tissue box. Welcome, studio tissue box. It's nice to meet you.
Yeah, tell me what you would paint.
I think ultimately grief is a breaking. It's a tearing apart. You know, it tears your mind from your heart, from your body, and then it tears each one of those to pieces. And I think half the work of grief is realizing that you are not going back the same, right? You're doing all this work to put yourself back together with tape and glue, and then the tape and glue is not sticking, and you're wondering what's going on. You're trying to heal. You're trying to put things back to normal, get back to normal, but you're not going back to normal. The journey of moving through grief is realizing that grief has reshaped you and that you're not going to go back together the same, and that's okay.
Mm-hmm.
Right? You know, people use terms like, I want to just get back to normal, or I want to move on. And I don't believe that you ever do fully go back to normal and that you will never move on. Grief deposits this darkness in you, and your heart has to learn how to reshape around that darkness. Your heart doesn't go back to the same shape. It reshapes to enfold this new darkness. And I believe you can go back to wholeness, but that wholeness includes this darkness that is now a part of you.
So this may be a spoiler in our story. We do have a beautiful, amazing son. He's a little past a year old now. How would you describe grief to him in a way that he as a child would understand when he's a little older?
Gosh, who looks forward to that conversation ever? No one. But I think it's so important to have those conversations with kids. You know, so many of us who have walked through grief, we try to pretend it's not there, try to shove it down, try to pray it away, try to say it was the will of a higher deity, you know, so many of these things. And when you shove it down and don't deal with it, it festers and it gets worse. And my grief therapist said to me once, grief will always find a way to get out. And so if you don't let it out, it will come out in a much uglier way. And so I think it's really, really important that adults learn how to talk about grief so that, you know, careful the things you say, children will listen, right? Careful the things you do, children will learn. We have to learn how to do this better so that kids know how to move through their grief. So how would I describe grief to a kid? I think I would say it is a deep, deep sadness because you have lost someone or something that you love. And you're so sad that sometimes you can't breathe. And you're so sad that sometimes you think you will never not be sad again and life will never go back to normal. I think that's how I would describe grief to them, right? That's maybe the root of grief is sadness. But I would also, and you and I have talked about this a lot, but I would also say to a child that grief is kind of like a companion or a frenemy who has moved into your home, and they're there whether you want them there to be or not. Even if you beg them to go away, they're not going away.
Yeah.
And you have to learn how to live with them.
Yeah.
And to say to them, I know you're here for a reason, even though I don't want you to be here. I know there's a purpose for why you're here. And even if I don't understand, I'm going to try to say to you, you can stay here with me as long as I need it. But promise me that you will leave when I don't need you anymore.
Yeah. While you were saying that, this image came into my mind of our son. He loves his stuffed animals. And I was thinking, for a kid, you could almost have a stuffed animal that's like
represents it.
a dragon. And you can say dragons might be scary, and dragons are like grief, and they come and they're big and they're ferocious. But if you can learn to hold on to it and become friends with it, the dragon can actually protect you.
Yeah.
I feel that.
Right. Grief is a protection.
Yeah.
It doesn't feel that way. Like you got to get some perspective in order to be able to say that, right?
You can't be in the middle of grief.
Can't be in the middle of it. You are my protector.
Yeah.
Like, shut up.
Yeah.
But it's our body's response to an immense trauma. And the sooner we can learn to embrace it and know that it's serving a purpose, I think the sooner it can do its work in us.
Yeah, absolutely. What about misconceptions of grief?
Yeah, if you pop in right away, I think one is like, it's one and done. It happens and then it's done. I would say another one is it happens the second you experience the trauma. Like you experience your trauma and then grief is immediately there.
Which we know is not the case for all of us.
I also, we shall talk about that one later.
Oh, okay.
I also think a lot of people believe that it's embarrassing and shameful to experience grief, but more so to admit that you're grieving. And then I would say I think there's a lot of people, maybe less so our generation, more older generation, that believe that grieving is weakness. It's showing weakness.
Oh yeah, that's a big one.
And you can't do that. If admitting that you have a cold is showing weakness, which somebody said that to me a few weeks ago, somebody I work with often believes that admitting you have a common ailment, that's a weakness, then admitting you have grief or you're going through something, that's certainly a weakness.
Yeah. Other ones are like, you should be over your grief by now.
Yeah.
As if grief has a timeline.
Right.
Which kind of takes me to another thought, which is there a right way to grieve?
Yes. It's the way I grieve. That's the correct way. I kid. But you and I had a very big fight over that thing, right? You and I were grieving in very different ways at very different paces. And I think our anger towards each other was we each just wanted to be held and seen. We wanted to have mutual grief. And we couldn't understand what the hell the other person was doing and why they were doing that.
Yeah.
So to answer your question, no, I don't think there's a right way to grieve. I think there are common experiences. I think there are shared themes that people walking through grief experience. There might even be 5 stages of grief, but I think grief is messy, and I think it's non-linear, and I think it's deeply personal, and I think it needs to be that way because grief has to be experienced the way that person who's walking through it needs to experience it because it's theirs. It's theirs to walk through. It's theirs to work through. And so therefore it can't be categorized or put in a timeline that makes sense to someone else.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
I think the only thing that is a wrong way is not dealing with it. Like we've briefly mentioned earlier,
Meaning
shoving,
not grieving at all.
it, not admitting there is grief, being so disconnected from your heart and your mind and your body.
Right.
You're not even aware that you're grieving.
Okay. Yeah.
Or, outsourcing your grief to it being the will of God. I don't think that is helpful to the human experience at all.
Yeah.
You still experienced a very real loss. You can express anger. You can work through all the stages of grief. One additional thing that came to mind when I was considering this question, which you and I learned after the fact, is that when you are the one experiencing grief, you get to be the one to set boundaries for those who may not be handling your grief well, or with whom being in relationship is triggering that grief. Okay, so
talk more about what that means.
This is a tough one. I don't know that I have like precise words for it, but this was a big aha for us after. So during, I would say, the deepest phase of our infertility journey, we just could not be around kids. It was so painful to be around other families. I couldn't handle seeing baby bumps. I couldn't go to baby showers. Like, we could barely be out in public and see kids running around. Like, our hearts were that raw. And so we had to make a really hard choice to isolate ourselves from people that we loved. And we knew we were hurting people. We talked about that. Like, we probably hurt them. But we also had to trust that if they were true friends, they would understand. And that they would come back to us when we were ready. And that's exactly what happened. Like, when we moved through that season and we could come out of our cocoon of isolation, we went back to people.
Yeah.
And we apologized. Yeah. And what we predicted would happen. It happened, right? So our closest friends immediately said, we already knew, guys. We knew. We knew that's what was going on. It's okay. We get it. Were we sad? Were we hurt? Yeah, but we get it. It's okay. Like, immediate forgiveness. Yeah. And we had to have conversations. It wasn't easy. Yeah. Like, there was an impact, intent versus impact. There was an impact to our decision that we had to work through with them. We had to rebuild trust, but they got it. They understood. They didn't hold that against us, right? But then there were others who were also hurt, who made sure we knew that we hurt them, who made it about them. Like, well, I wanted to share about what was going on in my parenting journey and how raising kids is hard and you weren't there for me, like those types of things, right? And that clarified for us the people that we already wondered if they were safe people for us. And their response confirmed, we can still have surface relationships with these people, but they don't get it. At the end of the day, they don't get what we walked through, and they're not willing to learn. And so, like, we had to set, continued boundaries. But my point being is that when you walk through grief, you likely will hurt other people because of that grief. And it might be inevitable. And it's your choice that once you've walked through it, to figure out who you want to reconcile with, who's worth reconciling with, and who's not. But it's your power. It's within your power to set those boundaries, but know there are consequences. And then you have a choice once you've walked through it to deal with those consequences or not.
Yeah. Man, that is...
And I shall borrow a Kleenex.
So good. And I've never heard anyone talk about this.
Yeah.
And I think it's such an important part of grief, both for the people going through grief and the people walking alongside someone going through grief. And if you're the one going through the grief, we already talked about that. You might have to set these boundaries. You get to set the rules because you're going through grief.
Yeah, it's your trauma. Mm-hmm.
But the thing about that is there are consequences, like you're saying.
Yeah.
But if you're walking alongside someone going through grief, my God, be patient. Like,
hold space. Put yourself in their shoes.
Learn to manage your emotions.
Yeah.
So that at the end of this, if your friend chooses to come back.
Yeah.
And that's a hard thing to do. That's like a true blue friend right there.
Yeah.
If they're willing to wait. But like you said, we've had friends who were and friends who weren't.
Yeah. It's like you get to, if you're the friend walking alongside, choose your woundedness. Like, is this worth being wounded over? Yeah. Right? Like, your friend just lost this thing.
Yeah.
It doesn't take a super smart human to be like, they're acting out of pain.
Yeah.
I get it.
Yeah.
I choose not to be offended by that, and I will be there for them no matter what.
Yeah.
I guarantee that person will remember. You remember who is there for you and who makes the shitty comments.
Yes, you do. Society tends to judge how people grieve.
Mm-hmm.
I think we've both felt judged individually, collectively. But why do you think there is so many expectations on how other people think you should grieve? Why do you think people judge so much in this particular thing?
I think a big one is that grief makes other people really uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Really uncomfortable, right? So people don't know what to do or say, and people are really not good with silence or just being with the person, right? So yeah, I think it makes people uncomfortable. I also think that seeing another person grieve brings up your own grief. Either grief that you healthfully moved through or undealt with grief. And you would rather keep yours, suppressed and quiet. And so when somebody is like grieving openly in front of you, you're like, knock it off. You're bringing up my own grief.
Oh, that's an
or
interesting
I was
thought.
able to shove mine down. Why can't you shove yours down? Right?
Oh, so many people coming to mind now that you said it like that. Yeah, 100%. It makes people, because they haven't dealt with their own shit. So
it bubbles it up for them. Yeah.
For sure.
This was also really interesting. I have just the most beautiful grief therapist with whom I don't know that I would have survived the past X amount of years. But during one of our sessions, she talked about how in many cultures, movement and sound is built into grief relieving ceremonies. Okay, what do I mean by that? Like at funerals in some cultures, there are hired wailers who follow behind the casket and scream and wail in the street, right? It's physically getting the grief that sits in the body out through your vocal cords. And then hearing another person wail gives you permission to be vocal with your feelings. Or I know there are tribes in Africa that at funerals, at death ceremonies, there is jumping, right? Or there's shaking of hands. There's movement, and it literally gets the trapped, just nervous, broken, angry energy of grief out when you scream, when you move, when you wail. And so there are many cultures that have built in movement and sound, and our culture goes silent. Our culture values silent grief. My grief therapist would often talk about every time you journal or write about your grief or your trauma, or every time you speak about it, it helps release the pain that's inside of you. It gives it an outlet. So when you speak about your trauma, it allows that pain to come up through your vocal cord, out through your mouth, out. Or when you write about it, it goes down your arm, through your fingers, onto the pen and paper, out, right? It helps to release the power, the hold that grief has on you when you keep getting it out. And speaking about it once or writing about it once is not enough.
Yeah.
You have to keep doing it and keep doing it and keep doing it until the power has lost its hold over you.
Yeah.
And what's funny is I think very highly of the way that I've grieved. I'm kidding. What I mean is that I've been a very, very, very intentional griever, but I've journaled about it. I've talked about it. I went to therapy for years. I did all the healing techniques. But preparing for this podcast today, when I was trying to work through my response on some of the questions, my mind was going like brain foggy, like it was going sluggish and dark. And I couldn't like recall things, or I couldn't figure out words. And it was as if my mind was still going into protection mode. Like, don't go back there. This is a wildly painful time. Right. And it's crazy to me that like, even though I have worked so hard to be honest and real and process my grief, my brain and my body still go into protection mode when my husband wants to talk with me about the grief that we shared together. So it's just fascinating to me. And like the more that you can be in tune with your heart and your mind and your body, the more you can identify like, oh, weird. My brain is still protecting me. Like, thanks body, thanks brain, but also you're safe. We're not going through it right in this moment. We're okay.
Right.
We're just remembering, we're just reflecting on it.
Right. And the more that people talk about it like you are, the more others who are experiencing
have permission.
grief have permission to experience it however they are experiencing it.
That's such a great transition for like the next thing I wanted to say.
Oh, well, please.
Well done, you.
Take it away.
No.
I'll hand you the cards.
Great. I'll just host the whole thing.
Host the whole thing.
Yeah. No, what I was going to say is like around this sentiment of grief is shameful and should be kept silent. You and I made a very conscious decision not to be silent.
Yeah.
We made a very conscious decision to choose vulnerability and bravery and to share publicly what we were going through. And we did that because we did it for our own sakes, because we didn't want to isolate more than we already were. But we mainly did it because we knew so many others who were experiencing infertility like us, or just infertility similar to us, or had just experienced major grief in their life and didn't know how to talk about it. And we just really felt like maybe if we could talk about it, it gives other people permission to say, oh, us too. You know? And so every time I would post on social media, or I would share about a loss, or I would share an update on where we are at in our infertility journey, I would get inundated with hundreds of messages, texts, public comments, private DMs, phone calls, hundreds. I would be up for hours after every time I posted because people just came out of the woodworks. People we knew, people we didn't know, people that remembered me that I can't remember. They're from a past, job or something. Just people coming out of woodwork saying, "Thank you for sharing. This gives me the courage to share." Or, my story is similar to yours. It gives me hope. Or, you've put into words what I can't express. Thank you. And so it confirmed to us that what we were doing was the right thing. There was also a shadow side. Right?
As there always is.
Like it wasn't always easy. Sharing publicly made people feel like they had permission to comment on our lives, what we were doing, to give us advice, to take on our pain as if it was their own pain. And I remember many times standing in front of people and sharing our story, and especially as a woman, right? We're talking about my body here.
Yeah.
Especially as a woman standing in front of people, and I would feel totally naked. Like I'm sharing about the most vulnerable thing ever, and it's about my body. And I could just watch people watching me, and I could hear their thoughts. Like, I wonder what's wrong with her. I wonder why her body isn't doing what it's supposed to do. So I'm not saying this was easy. I'm not saying it's for everyone, but I'm so damn proud of how brave we were and how vulnerable we were. And I know it was the right decision for us, and I know it's allowed us to come to a healthy place because of it. But I also know that it had a major impact on other people and allowed them to come forward and start sharing too.
Yeah, 100%. 100%. Grief doesn't have a timeline, and you're going to have to do the work sometimes for a long time. A lot of people feel pressure to move on. Did you feel pressure to move on?
Yeah, it's dumb. It's dumb. People should stop feeling that.
Yeah.
I think the term move on is so offensive. And I think it's so dishonoring to the person you've lost or the dream you've lost or whatever it is that you're experiencing grief over. I don't think we move on. I think we can move forward. I think we can learn to breathe again, but we don't move on. And so that's one of those things that people can just keep in their brains, like, don't say that, don't say that.
Yeah.
Like, the person that you know who's moving through grief has to figure out how to take one step forward, how to keep breathing, how to reshape their heart around this darkness, but they will never move on.
Yeah. And they shouldn't move on because grief changes you forever.
Yeah. I will say that, like, one thing that you and I learned in very powerful ways is, I'll call it the anniversary effect. So, a year after you and I lost our 3 little babies, which was the height of our grief and our infertility journey, the weeks leading up to that 1-year anniversary, I was starting to have daily panic attacks again. I was starting to have physical pain again. Like I felt like as if I was getting all those shots again, or I was going through all those uncomfortable procedures again. And I remember I had a session with my grief therapist, and I was like, what is happening? And she said, well, it's the anniversary effect, Gretchen. What is that? So what I learned is that our bodies and our subconscious cannot differentiate between a right now and this already happened to you. And so they act as if the trauma is happening in real life again. And you have to do the work of telling your subconscious and telling your body, this already happened. What's different from when this happened? What's the same, right? And an anniversary could be a year, it could be 5 years, it could be 10 years, right? Like, this is not something that just happens 1 year later and then you're done, right? And so there are like 2 things that grief therapists taught me, and then I taught you, and then we did them. And they can be really, really powerful tools. So the first one is a game you can play with yourself, or if it's helpful to have somebody do it with you. But it's called, like, what's the same and what's different. So what's the same right now as when you went through that trauma? And then what's different? And the hope is that what's different is what gets your body and your subconscious to chill out. So for us, when I was approaching that 1 year anniversary, though, what's the same? Okay, I'm in the same job. I still don't have a kid. I'm still married to my husband. Those types of things. I'm still in the same house. What's different? I'm not actively in infertility treatments. I am not about to lose 3 babies. I am not having daily panic attacks. I'm pursuing other options, other ways to build our family, right? And you just have to keep repeating and keep repeating and keep breathing.
Yeah.
This is not the same
Yeah.
over and over. But it's one of those things where, once again, you have to be so tuned into your body and your mind to even recognize
Yeah.
that an anniversary is coming and that you're
Yeah.
reacting to it. And so I think a powerful tool is to have these anniversaries in your calendar. And you might be saying to me, I'm never going to forget the day that my husband died or the day that this thing happened. I'm not talking about just the big ones, but the little ones. Like, oftentimes the grief is a number of big and little things that led up to the big L loss.
Right. Or after the loss.
Yeah. And then that other tool is called rewriting. And this turned out to be a beautiful tool for you and I. So when an anniversary is approaching, you have the opportunity to rewrite what happened that day in a way to maybe bring a little bit of joy back to that day, to trick your subconscious, to, there's a lots of benefits to it. So I'm going to give you an example of how we rewrote. So our wedding anniversary happens to fall in the middle of when we were going through IVF and when we experienced some of our big losses. And so on one of our wedding anniversaries, we were parked in the parking lot of a restaurant that we were about to have our anniversary dinner at, and you had to give me shots for
the IVF treatment.
Treatment, right?
Shots with a needle.
In
the parking lot.
And they were painful. I bruised from them. They often made me cry. It was embarrassing to be doing this in a car with people walking by. So not a great memory, but just like so many things during that season, we had to get it done. And then we went out and we had a nice dinner. So a year later, we rewrote it. So you surprised me, Gentry Lusby, and you took us back to the exact same restaurant, and you parked the car in the exact same spot, and you pulled out from your backpack a bottle of vodka and two shot glasses. So instead of giving me a painful injection, we did shots of vodka together, and then we went inside and ate our anniversary meal. And it was this beautiful rewriting that had that same word, shots, in it. But now I look back and it makes me laugh. It no longer holds power over me.
Yeah. You just put this extra layer on top of the initial thing that helps you see it differently.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. That was a really fun rewriting. We've done a lot of those.
We did a lot of rewriting.
We've done a lot of rewriting.
We'd be here for hours if we told
but that
you
one
all.
was a really fun one just because of how closely it matched the original thing.
Yeah.
All right. So we've talked a lot. We've hinted at parts of our story. We've hinted at things that we've gone through, but we haven't really gotten into the full story. So we're going to do that. But before we do that, we're going to play a little game.
All right.
So I thought it would be interesting to pull up some stats on grief, on loss, and on infertility, both as a way to help raise awareness. People may or may not know these things, and to make a fun game. So we're playing 3 truths and a lie, which is just, the normal, like 2 truths and a lie.
Okay.
I'm going to give you 4 statements.
Okay.
You have to tell me which one's the lie.
All right. I'm ready.
Okay, here we go. Here's your first round. It's estimated that 12.5 million Americans experience grief due to the loss of a loved one each year. According to data, so that was 1.
Okay.
According to data, 1 in 4 pregnancies ends in a miscarriage. Number 3, most people get pregnant within the first 3 months of trying. And number 4, men account for about 50% of infertility cases.
I think, I want one to not be a truth. I'm going to say 1 in 4 pregnancies end in miscarriage is not a truth. I'm hoping it's not.
That is true, according to a study. The lie in that batch, do you want to try to get the lie?
No, you just tell me.
Yeah, the lie was that most people get pregnant within the first 3 months.
That was my
trying.
second guess.
Yeah. Okay, next batch. Roughly 1 in 6 people experience infertility at some point in their lives. Up to 40% of women experiencing infertility have a diagnosis of depression or anxiety that comes from it. Approximately 10 to 20% of individuals experiencing grief develop complicated grief, which is a condition where feelings of loss are debilitating and they don't actually ever improve. And number 4, a new study finds that 78% of unexpected grief breakdowns occur in the grocery store.
I'm going to say the last one's the lie.
I almost broke.
I can tell your lie face. No, I believe, I mean, the one about women and mental health.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I thought that stat was important to include because 40%, that's nearly half of the women experiencing infertility, end up in depression or anxiety.
Yeah.
And if you're experiencing it, you're not alone. But also if you're walking alongside someone, it's like we said before, if you're walking alongside someone, be aware.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's devastating, which I'm sure you can completely relate to that.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. All right, last batch. 33% of people in the UK have frequently avoided talking about their loss because they knew it would make others uncomfortable. 15 to 30% of couples are diagnosed with unexplained infertility after a comprehensive diagnostic workup. A new grief etiquette course teaches people how to respond to those going through grief without saying everything happens for a reason. 53% of Americans say they've been visited by a dead family member in a dream or some other form.
I'm going to say the grief etiquette course because as much as I would love for that to be a thing, I don't think humans are evolved enough to have done that.
Maybe I should develop that.
We should develop that. We'd be so good at that.
We would be so good at that.
We love hosting.
Yeah.
We'll host dinners and teach people how to not be assholes.
How to not be assholes and what to say, which is usually nothing.
Right.
Yeah. The stat about 1 in 6 people experience infertility, that's obviously true. And that makes sense. You kind of touched on it, how when we started to open up publicly, so many people reached out. And I think what happens is that people don't talk about infertility. They don't talk about miscarriage. It's shameful to a lot of people. Like you said, it felt hard for you as a woman, and it's your body and it's so personal, and you felt like you were just standing naked in front of people all the time. So people don't talk about it, which makes it more isolating. People feel more alone. And I think that is what makes the grief from infertility a special kind of loss because it's invisible.
Ugh.
And even the loss is often invisible because a lot of the loss that comes from infertility is through miscarriage. Or
not even getting pregnant. It's just the loss of a dream of a pregnancy.
Yeah. So there's not always something tangible. There's not a gravesite. There's not anything that represents the loss for people. And so people experiencing grief through infertility sometimes don't feel like they have permission to grieve because it doesn't feel real to them. So I want to make it real through our story and help people both going through it and walking along other side people to understand just how real this grief is and just how real this loss is. So take us back, tell our story. When was the moment or time when you realized that infertility was going to be something that we were going to have to struggle with? Yeah.
You know, this has been a 7-year journey, so you're going to have to help me remember this, right? Like preparing for this segment in particular is the one that made my brain go foggy because I think it's actually going back and remembering.
Yeah.
Remembering all we went through, all the losses, but also all the things we tried and the loss of hope and then the picking ourselves back up again. And, you know, the month after month after month of trying, and every time my period would start, it was this devastating thing for us. Yeah. You know, how many days would you and I wind up in bed under the covers mid-afternoon because
this next newest loss was just too much for us to hold up under, you know? So you have to help me through this.
Yeah.
It's part of the perks of being married to
The host.
the host. Okay, the moment that I knew, well, I think it's important to say that you and I got married later in life.
Yeah.
And so we didn't start trying to build a family until I was 35.
Yeah.
And we didn't learn this until a couple years into our journey, but apparently 35 is a really big number in the infertility world, because it's that age where a woman's egg quality starts to drastically decline, but also a woman's just normal functioning of being able to hold on to a healthy pregnancy also declines.
Right.
So the year that we decided to start having kids was not a good year for my body, apparently. So I believe we tried for about 6 months before we started testing. And testing started pretty organic, pretty low key. I went to my gynecologist and said, "Hey, I'm in this age. We've been trying for this many months.
Yeah.
You know, is there a way to just make sure like I'm healthy, things are in working order, you know, egg count is there, all that." So that's how it all started. And, you know, for a couple of years, it was just really basic, minor procedures and blood tests and workups just to make sure we were both functioning the way that we needed to. And well, the answer we kept getting was, you know, there's nothing wrong, which we eventually learned was called unexplained infertility. And to this day, we have unexplained infertility,
Which is really unhelpful.
Super helpful diagnosis.
Because when you don't know what's wrong,
you can't fix it.
Try to do everything you can to fix it, but you don't. It's like going after a moving target.
Yeah, there are so many parts of this journey, especially for me as the woman, that are crazy making, but having the diagnosis of unexplained fertility is part of the crazy making process.
Yeah.
Like I wish something was wrong so that I could fix it. I could put my energy into fixing it instead of just endlessly wondering what I could possibly do to fix it. So yeah, so it started off basic testing, all that type of stuff. Couldn't find anything. And then we started with one fertility clinic. We went through several intrauterine inseminations through them, 4 to be
IUI.
precise. It's kind of one of the first steps. The first steps is, you know, you take medication and then you try naturally. And then when that doesn't work, then you try IUI. And when that doesn't work, you move on from there.
Very quickly, when you go from trying naturally to involving doctors, something that is meant to be private, free,
fun
becomes wildly expensive, very invasive, and very regimented and challenging.
Takes all the joy out of it. Yeah, it's like what's usually done, like, you know, in romantic mood lighting is now involves a team of doctors and bright lights.
Because we always had sex in romantic mood lighting.
Well, I don't know. You know, there's the Hollywood version of it. So, but it's true. It's like what is free, fun, and private.
Private, yeah.
Was public, extremely expensive, and stole all the joy out of it.
And as you progress down
the farther you get into it, the more it becomes that way. Yeah. So years into procedures and tests and all this type of stuff.
Years. Let's just stop for a second because this is a monthly cyclical thing when you're trying to get pregnant. So people who are experiencing this will understand this is not like, oh, one disappointment and then 6 months passes. This is every 28 days, you're getting dealt a blow after blow after blow. And
which means then you have to figure out how to pick yourself back up every 28 days.
Yes.
If you can pick yourself back up every 28 days.
And then quickly do what the doctors are telling you to do all over again.
Yeah, to readjust, reset, start up, new medications, new shots.
Somehow you have hope, and what we ended up calling it later in the journey was, or what I call it, is manufactured hope, because I don't think it was authentic hope. I think it was just you learn.
We had to.
You learn, for your sanity, you have to manufacture hope every time, every 28 days.
Yeah. Right. And then it's high pressure, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you experience a loss when the period comes, and you learn a lot about your cycle, whether you want to or not. And your husband sure learns a lot about it. But then 2 weeks later is when you are fertile again.
Mm-hmm.
So you have 14 days to grieve, to pick yourself back up, to figure out a new plan with the doctor, to execute that plan, and then to surmount the pressure of, here's my 24 to 48 hour fertile window. Go.
Yeah.
It's high pressure and it's exhausting.
Yeah.
And so,
but don't do it on this day, do it on this day. And don't do it 2 days in a row, do it every other day. And make sure that you start on this day and then make sure that you also do it on this day.
Yeah, we had charts. We had
all directed by doctors.
We had whiteboards with instructions. And it would be a lie to say
so
that
sexy.
It's so sexy. It would be a lie to say that for 7 years we tried every month.
True.
Right? There were chunks of time that we took breaks.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
We had to take breaks for our insanity.
Yeah.
My poor body.
Yeah.
Our mental health. Our relationship. Our relationship got beat up.
Yeah. Well,
got
because
beat up.
as soon as you start with the doctors, you started on medications.
Yeah.
So
my hormones were not my own.
Yeah, it was completely wreaking havoc.
Yeah.
On you.
So, so about, a couple years into this process, we're really recognizing that I am in excruciating pain most of the time. And so we start bringing that up with the doctors too. Like, is something more going on? And so people kept mentioning endometriosis. I kept reading about it.
Mm-hmm.
And endometriosis is one of a number of causes of infertility. And it's unexplained phantom pains that you can't diagnose unless you open the body up and look for it. Really cool.
So cool.
And the clinic that we were at just didn't want to address it. I remember the doctor, who was a female doctor and should have known better, said to me, well, is learning that you have endo going to make you more fertile? No, it's not. So either we do the work and the expense of opening you up and finding it, or we just keep focusing on pregnancy. And that was the last step for us. I had already felt like me, the woman, I was just a body, and that it was all about the pregnancy. It was no longer about me.
Yeah.
And then to be told that my pain didn't matter, it just, we were done.
Yeah.
And so we found a new fertility clinic just to start over. We weren't ready to give up on our hope, but I needed to be seen. And the very first meeting we had with this doctor, we brought up the fact that, I'm in a lot of pain. Could endometriosis be a thing? And this doctor said to me, Gretchen, we need to separate you, the woman, from the process of getting pregnant. You are a human. You have value. We need to address the pain. And once we address the pain, then we can talk about pregnancy.
Yeah.
And I remember you and I just looked at each other and we were like, okay.
Someone is listening.
Someone is listening.
Yeah.
And within 2 weeks, I was having exploratory surgery to find out if I had endometriosis.
It was fast. I forgot.
It's very fast. He had an opening in his schedule, and we left that date we left that first meeting with him with the date 2 weeks later.
Yeah.
And the surgery happened end of February 2020.
Yeah. Right before COVID hit.
Oh, you gave it away.
My bad. I'm sorry. Do it again.
In case none of you remember the year that COVID hit, it was 2020, March of 2020. Okay, so
when it hit our country,
we signed up for this exploratory surgery. I come out of surgery and I wake up to find Gentry telling me they found endometriosis. It was all over the left side of your body, which is where all of my pain was concentrated. And then he told me the doctor got it all.
Yeah.
And I remember crying not because I was in so much pain, which I was, but I was crying because, and you'll hear this from other people with endometriosis. It's not a pain that you can find in blood work or in an x-ray, or it's not a skin rash. You can't fix it with a medication. It's a phantom mystery pain. And so to have somebody say, oh, this is why you were in pain,
Right.
felt like validation. Like I wasn't crazy. I wasn't making this up. I wasn't manifesting this.
Yeah.
It was real legitimate disease.
Yeah.
So that was really helpful. And then I also cried because it's like, it's gone, which means our chances of getting pregnant are much higher now.
Right.
So then just a couple weeks later, when I was still hobbling around recovering, COVID hits and the world goes into lockdown, which meant we couldn't pursue the next step in our infertility journey until the world opened back up, which was really disappointing. It gave me more time to heal, but we also knew endometriosis grows back.
Yeah.
So we got to get on this soon.
It felt like because of age and because of just this unhelpful statistics that doctors tell you to try to be helpful, we knew that every month at this point mattered. Every attempt. By 2020, we knew. We were 4 years into it at that point.
More, I think.
And it was like,
oh no, yeah,
we can't miss a month. Like we can't miss a chance because of how rapidly things can decline as we age. It's kind of like the scene in Indiana Jones where he's running from the boulder. It's like, that's sort of how it feels like, right? It's like you're up against this thing. Well, I'm trying to paint a picture for people to understand that there was an urgency to what we were doing. And so having to stop because of COVID played into this fear of like, we're missing opportunities. We're missing opportunities.
Yeah. So, from March until, I don't know, very early summer, it was only emergency procedures and surgeries that were allowed. So as soon as the world opened back up enough to have elective procedures like this, we got started with the next phase, which was in vitro fertilization, IVF. So an IVF is the most invasive, the most expensive, the most high risk. And because of my age and because of how many eggs I was producing every month, we were told this was a high risk attempt at getting pregnant, but it was our last option. And so we started down that journey, which, like we've talked about before, involved countless injections every day. We have pictures of my stomach and my thighs just so bruised from all of this. So many medications in pill form. There were weeks where every day we had to drive into the labs and I had to get blood draws and I had to get ultrasounds and all types of things every day. So that they knew the precise moment to first extract eggs, right? So all these medications are helping me grow as many eggs as large as possible. And then surgery number 1 is to then extract all those eggs from me. And then they are put together with your semen in a lab. And then you see what grows. And then based upon what grows and how healthy they are, then there's another procedure to then transfer those embryos back to me. Right? So this is a very, very scientifically articulated process that is precise. This process is really emotionally and physically challenging for couples in any situation. But we were going through it during COVID. And that meant that I was doing it all alone. But Gentry wasn't allowed in the labs with me when I was getting blood drawn. He wasn't allowed in the doctor's visits when I was able to look at our babies in petri dishes. I went under anesthesia alone. I woke up from surgeries alone. I walked into the hospitals alone. I walked out of the hospitals alone. And Gentry sat in the car through all of this, just desperately hoping I would send him a text or a picture to keep him updated.
Yeah.
It still makes me cry.
Yeah. It's already so isolating. And then in our situation, we just couldn't be together.
I mean, our text thread is like an account of those times, right?
Yeah.
It's like all these pictures of selfies of me in a hospital gown with my hairnet in, and then me waking up from anesthesia looking groggy, but sending him a picture so that he knew I was okay. Or, it's just, it's an added layer.
Yeah.
So, long story short, they were able to extract 4 follicles from me, and those 4 turned into 3 viable embryos. And 2 of those embryos looked healthy and good, and so those were chosen to transfer back to me.
Mm-hmm.
And after those 2 were transferred to me, the 3rd one died in the lab.
Yeah.
And so we knew that our only hope, because we could not do this again, we could not afford to do this again, my body couldn't go through this again. We knew that our only hope was those 2 little embryos, those 2 little babies that were transferred back to me.
Yeah.
And so those 2 weeks between transfer and then finding out if we were pregnant were brutal.
Yeah.
I know we did more than this, but I just have these memories of just sitting on our back porch, wrapped in a blanket, drinking tea, just waiting.
Yeah, it just felt like endless waiting.
Endless waiting.
Yeah.
Daily calls from the lab with updates on the health of that 3rd.
And then embryos are growing.
Yeah.
And that kind of stuff.
Oh, it was brutal. And so we decided to go away. We decided to go camping on that 2-week mark, right? So that morning we woke up, we drove to our fertility clinic. We took the blood test that would tell us whether I was pregnant or not. And then we immediately drove to this campground a few hours away to receive the news there. And we knew we wouldn't get a call until like 3 or 4 in the afternoon. And so we spent the day hiking. We set up our camp. We sat around the fire. We dreamed. We planned. We were so hopeful.
Yeah.
And we were sitting around the campfire across from each other when I got the call from the doctor. And the news was I wasn't pregnant.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a short call, but I remember looking at Gentry across from the fire and just shaking my head no. And you started to lose it. And I couldn't fall apart yet because I was on the phone with the doctor. And when I finally got off the phone with the doctor, I came over and I sat on your lap and we just wailed.
Yeah.
We cried and we cried and we cried.
Yeah. In the middle of a campground.
Middle of the campground with our dog next to us.
Yeah.
And, it wasn't just, we didn't just cry because it was another loss. We cried because this represented the end of our medically assisted fertility journey.
Yeah. This was our second attempt at IVF.
Yeah.
Kind of glossed over that. First one didn't. First one had to turn into a rescue IUI. And then the second one is the one where they actually did the transfer. And so it was our one chance.
It was our one chance.
And then because of the amount of eggs that we were able to get from extractions, the doctor said it's really highly unlikely that another extraction would result in something different.
Yeah. Yeah, so it was devastating news. And I remember for those first weeks after it, you and I were pretty unified, right? So we did intentional things like walking through beautiful gardens together. We surprised each other with treats. We talked a lot about how we were doing. We tried to figure out, one of the biggest parts of the grief of this was we had to now envision a new life, one without kids.
Mm-hmm.
And could we do that? And we kept circling back to that discussion. Like, can you imagine a life where there is no kids? Or can you imagine a life where there are no biological kids?
Yeah.
And neither one of us we couldn't have that conversation so soon after that devastating loss. So I remember those first few weeks we were pretty unified. And then I think the real grief hit. And that's when you and I started grieving at different paces and in different ways. And it splintered us.
Yeah.
It splintered us. It wasn't more than 3 weeks after that loss that I started developing a debilitating anger towards you, because I felt like I had lost my partner and I didn't know what the heck you were doing and why you weren't grieving and what was wrong with you and how you could be so flippant about the loss, you know?
Yeah.
And so it drove this huge wedge between us. And I read years ago that when you experience a loss or grief, you have this choice in how you grieve. And it's kind of like the analogy is a setting sun, that if you experience a loss, a lot of people are scared of that darkness that's coming after that loss. And so they chase the setting sun, trying to stay in the light as long as possible. And what happens is that sun goes faster than you do. And so you wind up heading into darkness and staying in darkness a whole lot longer, versus you experience the loss and you turn and you immediately head straight into the darkness, head straight into the grief, and you meet the rising sun on the other side in half the time. And that's what I did. It's always how I've grieved. It's always how I've faced and loss and trauma in my life, is I immediately address it. I immediately surround myself with healers and tools and a community, and I deal with it.
Yeah. I don't.
Yeah. And you did the opposite.
I did the opposite. And what we learned, which has been really good for our marriage post all of this, is I'm a latent griever.
Yeah.
That I don't grieve in the moment, but it will hit me. But we know that now, that the grief takes longer to register in my mind and my body.
And sometimes it's a year or
Sometimes
2
it's
years
a
later.
year or 2 years. And again, there's no right or wrong way to grieve.
Yeah.
That's how I experience grief. I experience it delayed
Yeah.
every time.
Yeah.
And that's what was happening. And we didn't know it, so we didn't understand it. I didn't understand it. And before all of this, I also was a big old avoider of feelings and anything emotional. I just love to just shove that shit down. And so I was doing that. So you had you running into it, embracing and feeling the vastness of all that grief is. And then you had me, who didn't have the physical, mental manifestation of grief within me yet. And then couple that with my tendency back then to just shove that shit down and move on.
Yeah.
Literally move on. Like we're saying, you don't move on from grief, but that's what I was doing.
Yeah,
I was
you were just running hard and fast in the opposite direction.
Hard and fast in the opposite direction because I didn't know what else to do.
Yeah.
I don't do that anymore. I've learned. I've grown.
Yeah. But I remember it's not the point of this conversation, but like our marriage almost ended over grief. And I know there's a lot of marriages that do. I remember specific conversations, fights where we would be sitting on the floor of the kitchen or sitting on the floor of your office. And I remember yelling at you like, I don't understand how you were not grieving, and you yelling back at me, I don't understand how you still are.
Yeah.
Well, clearly we both remember that.
Well, it's because they're pivotal moments in our life.
Yeah.
And I don't feel shame for that, But I have grown so far beyond that because of eventually experience the grief that
Yeah.
we experienced together,
Yeah.
and going through therapy and getting the help and the tools that I needed. And so, when we were going through stupid shit people say, it's like, I said all of that stuff. I said some of it to you. And it's just important, I think, for people to understand that you're never too far gone from learning how to be better.
Better.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And it's because of my experience with grief, this particular experience with grief, that now I know better. And so, yeah, I did say things like, I can't understand how you still are grieving, which immediately is addressing everything we talked about, like timeline of grief and grieving the right or wrong way, and misconceptions about grief and judgments about grief, all of that.
We went through all of it.
But between us, not even anyone else, because of my own inability at the time to make sense of what was happening.
Yeah. Yeah. And the long and the short of it is, it was 2 years from the time we lost those babies until the time we felt whole again and our marriage was whole again. It was 2 years.
Yeah.
And there were many moments within those 2 years that we had to ask each other, are you still in this? Are you still in this? Are you still fighting? Yeah. Do you still want this? Are we going to be okay? What is our future going to look like? And even though we did it at different places, it was a constant decision for both of us to make space for the other to grieve the way that they needed to and at the timeline that they needed to. Because I entered grief faster than Gentry did, I was ready to talk about the future faster than he was.
Yeah.
And so while he had to be patient with me in the beginning because I was in the thick of it, I had to be patient with him at the end because
I was in the thick of it.
He was in the thick of it, right? And but I am, we eventually, our beautiful little boy, he came to us through adoption. And the second we met him, we knew our souls were always meant to be together.
Yeah.
But the reason why I'm sharing that is because adoption kept coming up within those 2 years. And we kept saying to each other, without a doubt, we would never adopt out of pain or out of lack. Because it wasn't fair to that precious child that we would only adopt out of pure joy and because that was the right step for our family. Yeah. And it took us 2 years to get to that point. And I'm so proud of us. We fought and we fought and we fought. And then suddenly out of the blue, one day we both woke up and we were both fully ready to start pursuing growing our family through adoption with joy.
Yeah.
It was just out of the blue.
Which is a wild and wonderful story.
For
and
another day.
Maybe we'll do another podcast all about adoption because it was wild and wonderful.
Yeah. But my point is we're where we are today with this beautiful, miraculous child and this healthy, vibrant marriage because we did not give up and we did the work and we surrounded ourselves with therapists and healers and tools to delve into grief and to keep communicating with each other.
Exactly. Yeah. And you led the charge in that, which is a really powerful, special thing.
Love you.
I love you. That is our story of infertility. And I think there's always more that we can say. There's always parts that we'll remember and things that we could share. But what you shared, what we talked about, that's our story. That's how we ended up and why we ended up experiencing this grief and the grief that comes from infertility. it's fucking hard, you know?
Cheers to that, man.
And I don't want anyone to listen to this and feel like I'm never, ever, ever going to be healed like them. Because there is no timeline for healing from grief. There is no timeline for healing from infertility. Not every grief story ends happily. Not every grief or not every infertility story has an ending like ours. And we recognize that. And there's space for that. What would you share is one of the most powerful things someone can do who's experiencing grief to learn how to move through it?
Yeah.
And move forward with it as a part of who they are.
Honestly, it's to do the damn thing. Grieve.
Yeah.
Let it out. Let it do its thing. Let it take its time. Get therapists, get healers.
Mm-hmm.
Find the people that have been through it too. Do the work. Clear your calendar. Clear out all the things except for your job or whatever. You know, give yourself space and do it.
Yeah.
Because if you don't do it, it will find a way to come out later, and it will be angry and it'll be festering and it'll be ugly.
Yeah.
So do it. Grieve and know deeply that it's the bravest, most beautiful thing that you could ever do. Being brave is not keeping it inside. Being brave is letting it out.
Yeah. Beautiful.
Whew.
Beautiful.
And then I would say the second thing is don't be a shitty human.
Be a better human.
Be a better human.
Yes, please.
Let your own experience with pain give you compassion and give you thoughtfulness.
Yes.
When it comes to other humans. Think before you speak.
Yes.
Know you don't have to fill the silence. Know that people, most often, what they need is a really comforting meal.
Yes.
And for you to just sit with them and be like, I know it hurts right now.
Yeah.
I'm here.
Yeah. Oh, so many things to talk about, but
2 hours
2
later.
hours later. On that thought, people would say to us, don't lose hope. And in the middle of the process, what we started saying back was, I can't hold on to hope right now.
It hurts too much.
But you can do it for us.
Yep. We did. We said that to so many people. We just need you to hold hope for us.
Hold hope.
And all they would say back to us was, okay, we will.
Yeah.
That's all we needed.
Yeah. And we hold hope for you.
Yeah.
We hold space for you. We hold space for whatever you're feeling, for whatever you're going through, because we understand and we get it. And you're not alone.
No.
We're going to end on a little bit of a fun note.
All right, I'm ready.
You ready?
Should I wipe my snotty nose before we laugh again?
We like to end the show with something called What a Time to Be a Human Awards.
Ooh.
And
is there like an actual award?
No.
Are we like giving trophies or?
No, I have dreams of having
Bottles
an
of
award show
wine?
someday though.
Yeah.
Like a televised Humans Forward, What a Time to Be a Human Award.
Oh,
Wouldn't that be an awesome thing to have?
Yes.
Right. So here's what I'm going to do. I give you an award category.
Oh boy. Okay.
You get to assign someone to win the award. It can be someone you know. It can be someone who's famous if you want to go that route.
Okay.
They can be dead. They can be alive.
Oh boy. I feel nervous.
But they have to be someone you know.
Okay.
All right. Are you ready?
Yes.
Here we go. Most likely to keep showing up even when it's hard.
Me.
Thank you for saying that. When I put that down, I was like, I really, really hope that she says herself, because that is you through and through. is you through and through.
Okay, you said I was going to laugh. Now I'm
I'm
crying
sorry.
again.
Okay. The Best Accidental Therapist Award.
Mother Nature.
Ooh, okay. All
Yeah,
right.
you know, like, I don't care if this sounds woo-woo, but there was so much healing that happened just by embracing the seasons of nature
Uh-huh.
and applying them to my own life. Like, nature has a season where there is death and dying, and then there's cold, frozen stillness after that. And then because of the death and dying and the cold, frozen stillness, you can burst forth with life after that. And so just laying outside under her trees and getting her gentle breeze and watching her seasons, it gave me permission to have seasons too.
Man, that's good.
Thank you.
Way to go. Choose your answer for this next one carefully.
Oh,
Best performance of acting fine when they were absolutely not
Gentry.
fine. Oh my God. I knew you were going to say.
Gentry wins the award for it. It's fine. Everything's fine.
It's
I'm
fine. Everything's fine. I'm fine.
All
Everything's
is fine.
Just shove that shit down.
Mm-hmm.
Just kidding. I don't do that anymore. I'm better.
Mm-hmm.
Most Unexpected Source of Comfort Award.
And the award goes to chocolate, wine, sushi, and Netflix.
I need you to pick a human being. This is what a time to be a human. I let you get away with Mother Nature because she's a mother, and
chocolate gave me a lot of comfort.
Pick
Okay,
a
what's the
human.
question again? The
most unexpected Source of Comfort Award.
I mean, there were a lot of beautiful, beautiful people in our lives, and our families were there for us. But I think I needed to talk to the other women who'd gone before me and had experienced loss in this way. I needed their voices. I think.
So to all the women
who went before me,
loss.
who experienced loss, who were brave enough to talk with me.
Wow, that's really amazing. All right, here's your last award. Choose carefully. That's not to hint that it should be me by any means. Most likely to give the best, it's okay to not be okay hug.
I mean, it honestly was you.
Oh, I wasn't fishing, but that's really nice.
Yeah, I mean, we had rough patches there. But for the most part, you're still my safe place. And you're always the one that reminds me that I don't have to be perfect and that nothing is wrong with me and that I'm not broken and that we'll figure it out. And even if our future never includes any children, we'll be okay. You know, you were always that one.
Yeah.
And thankfully our future holds a wild little man. But
he is wild and wonderful.
He's wild and wonderful. But yeah.
Thank you.
That would be you.
That's really nice.
So you're a denier, but you're also a really good hugger.
I love you.
Love you.
Thank you, my lovely, amazing, beautiful wife, for being on Humans Forward.
I forgive you for making me do this.
Thank you for watching and sharing this show. Click the upper link to watch last week's episode where I swear this isn't a self-help show and then talk about self-helpy things for the entire time. And be sure to click that subscribe button so you never miss another episode.